garden. I finished in Auschwitz. I mean, it was extraordinary. And as we walked in, I had Sarah with me, my wife at this point. We walked past the garden where the commandant at Auschwitz lived with his family. Novelist Ian McEwan wrote about it in Zone of Interest. I mean, there it was. We just walk into it. There was nobody around. And there was the cement wall there, hiding the children who were brought up by the commandant and his wife of Auschwitz in the garden. It is all breathtakingly real and frighteningly present. It was in the past, but it wasn't in the past. It's in the present now still.
Hello, I'm Zeb Links, editor at Aspects of History. The power of pilgrimage, the enduring legacy of war, and the significance and delicate nature of truth, memory, and reconciliation in an age of renewed global instability. Each of these proved to be the inescapable findings of a 1,300-kilometre journey on foot across the landscapes of Central Europe, so scarred by conflict over the centuries. In this episode of the podcast, author and historian Anthony Seldon joins me to discuss The Path of Light, his remarkable account of his journey from Kilometre Zero on the Swiss border to Auschwitz. Following the success of The Path of Peace, he set out across Germany, the Czech Republic, and Poland in search of the men and women, figures of light, who stood against tyranny and genocide during the Second World War, uncovering stories of courage, conscience, and humanity, and explaining why this search remains as relevant today as ever. Next week, it's a very special episode and one to look forward to as we reboot our Film Club podcast. We'll be thrashing out the twists and turns of 2026's most hotly anticipated movie, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, with Erica Stevenson, aka Moon Inc., classicist and the author of a new book, The Odyssey Effect, in the fine company of film editor and guru of cinema Henry Thackeray. But for now, settle in for this discussion on walking to Auschwitz with Anthony Seldon. Hello, Anthony, and thanks for joining me on the Aspects of History podcast. Fantastic to have you on.
Zeb, thank you for having me. What a great podcast.
Cheers. So The Path of Light is the title we're here to talk about. The paperback has just arrived on the shelves. It's quite a hard book to narrow down, part travelogue as you walk from Kilometre Zero to Auschwitz, recollections of your life in education as a writer, husband, and kind of an exploration of Central Europe hinging on the Second World War. But give us a bit of insight as to how the latest journey materialized.
Well, look, it's very different. Greetings. Hello, everyone listening to this. It's very different when you are on your foot. It is so totally different. I mean, all my life, I've been fascinated by the Second World War. I grew up under its shadow. My father had fought in the war and was badly wounded in it. And my mother's first husband was killed in the war. It framed everything. But when you actually walk on foot through it, it is transformed. And I would urge everybody to spend some time walking through these lands, if you haven't already done so, which you may have done. And I think the book should also be seen against as a kind of mirror to the infinitely greater work by Paddy Lee Fermer, Time of Gifts, his 3 books, walking to Istanbul before the Second World War. And I mean, there he was. He was a 18, 19, 20 year old and walking and writing at the time of Hitler coming to power and walking through Germany. And this is a book afterwards. So I'm trying to get below the surface. I mean, all my life, all my writing is about trying to get underneath the surface to find out what was really happening, the experience on the ground, and in particular trying to find, that there were many terrible people, but there were also extraordinarily brave and courageous. I mean, outrageously humane people on all sides, not just on the Allied side, but on the German side, and other sides fighting against us, other countries fighting against us. So it's a more nuanced look at evil, at goodness, at the unique horror and terror of that war. And I'm walking through the area where, in the first half of the 17th century, um, a terrible war happened that killed up to a third of those living in the lands of Germany, the 30 Years' War. I mean, war is everywhere that I'm walking. And so there we are. It's a multi-layered book.
Yeah, exactly. You undertook an earlier journey as well, the path of peace, from the southern terminus to the Western Front, all the way up through France. It's quite a sea change from your political writing and kind of other books. Is this new mode of writing and understanding places on foot, is that what compelled you to continue the pilgrimage, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And I mean, both are about getting under the surface of, I think I lost count. I think I'm now writing my ninth book on a prime minister, and it's getting below their surface into their mind, into their family, into the people around them. Uh, at the end of the day, they're just human beings. And you see that at rare moments, like when Starmer announces his resignation, and you can feel all that suppressed emotion busting up into the conscious realm in his voice and in his words. And I'm trying to understand reality in those books about the prime minister and other books I write, but here I'm trying to understand the people and the experience. So, I mean, just in brief, when I was writing a book about the First World War for the centenary in 2014, I came across a letter when writing this other book written by a soldier whose brother had been killed fighting very close to where he was fighting, just south of the Belgian border. And he wrote to his parents to say, as well as to his former head teacher, to say that if I survive, unlike my brother, I want after the war to create a path of peace from the Vosges Mountains, the Alps in Switzerland, where the front line ended, and all the way up to the North Sea. And the letter was dormant for 100 years, and I just thought, heck, I can do this. I mean, I had one of those aha moments. I've got to do this. I've got to create this path of peace along and fulfill his plan for people to walk along it so they can find out what they share in common, not what divides them. So that is the theme of the that book. And so I walked. It was 1,000 kilometers. It took me just over 1 million steps, and I was walking through soil where 10 million had become casualties. A high proportion of whom had died. And that book was called Path to Peace. And it was the Via Sacra that this soldier had in mind. By the way, he died very shortly after having the vision that he wrote down of creating this Path of Peace. And then I just thought, okay, I mean, I did that during COVID, and it kind of, I thought that was it. But then 2 or 3 years later, the idea came back about why not do something for the Second World War. And so I started off from the very spot on the Swiss border called Kilometer Zero, will be known to some. Kilometer Zero all the way then up the Rhine and then over the Black Forest, picking up the Danube, walking east, and then pick up the Pegnitz through the central top part of Bavaria and Nuremberg, and then over the hills into the Czech Republic and along the Elbe and the Oder up into Poland. And so, I mean, following rivers is good. They're flat, but they're not straight. That's the handicap. And looking and writing about the Second World War in a not dissimilar way. And that book was called, as you say, Path to Light. And the light was partly walking towards in my imagination, the lights of the crematorium at Auschwitz, which even in the darkest night lit up the sky, but also looking for figures of light who transcended the pit of despair and negation of free will that most people fell into, to find something that was transcended um, uh, venal, selfish, cowardly behavior.
Yeah. So why did you feel led to kind of seek out and explore these stories today about these figures of light?
Well, I mean, it goes back to that fascination with the Second World War. And it is something that has just captivated me. I mean, I can't fly past, you look up and you see the Lancasters going overhead, or Spitfires, the films, the constant remaking, reevaluating, reinterpreting stories about the Second World War, and novels and memoirs and books like Anthony Beevor. And so it's always been there, but I've always wanted to try and find that search for goodness, and for common, for shared values. Now, there was no moment in the Second World War akin to Christmas Day in 1914, when along the front at different points, the soldiers of their own accord came out of the trenches and fraternized with each other. I would say that, rather than hostility, is the natural state of humankind. Today, the vast majority of Russians do not follow Putin in this insane war in Ukraine. The vast majority of, as I understand it, of Americans do not follow Trump, or Israelis follow Netanyahu. There is that desire, maybe controversially, stronger in women, homemakers, than in men. Um, but they're very pronounced in very high percentages of men also. After all, it was the men who, in the First World War, broke out of the trenches, came over the parapet at great risk. They could have been shot, and wanted to fraternize. That is the natural instinct of human beings. Now, there was no moment like that in the Second World War. It was a more deeply unpleasant fighting, the way that civilians, um, the Russian soldiers advancing towards Berlin, treated women and children, but not by any means just the Russians. The mass bombing, the vastly higher percentage of German cities that were destroyed than British cities in the and there were strategic reasons for doing that, of course, but it was a vastly more unpleasant experience for soldiers with memories of the 30 Years' War and the brutality and the insanity of that. So, it begs questions about what is it that keeps civilization happening? Is civilization and human kindness the normal state of affairs, which would be associated with the thinking of philosopher Rousseau, or is aggression and nastiness associated with Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, the natural state of affairs, and therefore you need to have strong governments to keep civilians and nations from each other's throats? So, I mean, I'm very much believing that the natural kindness, the natural empathy, the desire to find what we share in common is more the natural state of human beings, and that lay behind the book, and I wanted to find those people.
Yeah, I mean, you really do get the sense you're battling with these thoughts with every step. Um, I mean, the route took you through Germany, Czech Republic, and Poland at a time of increasing renewed global instability between 23 and 25. Those contemporary events, and you just touched upon Ukraine, but October 7th, Gaza, events in the Middle East, was there any way they couldn't shape your reflections as you walked?
No, because nothing's ever new under the sun. And uh, the the thought of the Third World War breaking out as I was walking, the thought about Israel, I mean, it's the creation of the State of Israel in 1948 would not have happened without the 6 million being killed in the Holocaust of Jewish people, and the recognition that a homeland state for Jews was overdue and needed to happen. And people see that both ways. I mean, some people, Netanyahu, and people who think like him, think that this is what happened in the 30s and 40s necessitates the ongoing need to have huge aggression against anybody who threatens your borders. I mean, that's a very Hobbesian view. And there's another view which is saying, okay, we're here and we are going to try and be different. We're going to try and show that Jewish people who survived 2 millennia of persecution are going to build a state which is able and wanting to live alongside others and to be compassionate and to show that that working together, supporting each other, is a surer way forward, and in practical terms, that means a two-state solution, than endless wars. So you can take the experience of the Second World War both ways. I think strongly that the only way to have peace is through reconciliation. But obviously, that's not what other people feel. And then Putin, I mean, why has he done that? Why has one man, and it would never have happened without that one man, um, uh, initiated an action that has brought horror and terror and tragedy to millions of people? Um, for what end other than his perpetuation in office? So you have Putin looking to strengthen his own position and power, Netanyahu the same, Trump the same, all men, of course. And you then think, well, where are the forces of goodness? And they are the still small voices of calm that will be, but I think they are in tune with what is normal, natural, and healthy about humanity. And but it's the powerful and aggressive voices which win out all too often. But that doesn't mean that we extinguish and don't recognize the quieter voices. That's what the book's about.
And plenty of personal circumstance comes into your recollections of the journey. You're very honest about your health and your relationship with your wife, Sarah, and your sometimes kind of negative view of yourself. Has that bare all openness become an easier position to adopt in these books, or does it still feel quite unfamiliar? Has it been liberating?
Well, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a journey. I think pilgrimages, long distances. I mean, is there anyone able-bodied person listening to this who doesn't think their life would be enhanced? I know that your work, family pressures, etc., prevent it, but going on long walks. How many of you have been on a pilgrimage? Perhaps lots. Um, um, Perhaps war pilgrimages, perhaps the Camino, spiritual pilgrimages. But going on long walks encourages one to reevaluate one's life. I mean, we find that as we go through life, we wake up periodically and we find ourselves there. We can't we can't seem to throw ourselves off, and therefore the need to befriend ourselves, spend time with ourselves, and reconcile and align the depths of what we want. For many people, it's only when they develop cancer, as my wife Joanna did, has talked about, or get towards the end of their life, that they start thinking, did I really live my life in tune with my deepest thoughts? Did I even give enough time in my life to thinking what my truest thoughts, values, beliefs, purpose was? And pilgrimages are a very keen, important way, have been throughout human history, to discover what those are. I mean, after about day 3, 4, 5, a massive change comes over, and the preoccupations of life, living back in Doncaster or in Belfast or in Southampton or wherever one lives, uh, just start slipping off one's mortal coil, and one starts waking up to the present reality of where one is on the walk and one's companions, if there are companions, and one becomes in a different place. It's deeply refreshing. It's like picking up one's brain and putting it in a bath. Extraordinary senses of relaxation and new thoughts come to mind. So that's the rationale in general. For me, the purpose, I mean, I don't feel I'm fully there yet, which is partly why I want to do the third walk in this trilogy, to the Ukraine front line. But, definitely, I mean, family stuff, the fact that we're all affected. I mean, we're all affected by the First World War, incredibly still. I don't think there's anybody listening to this, unless one's family lived on the other side of the world, and were totally isolated, who hasn't in some ways still affected by the psychological damage inflicted by the First World War, which, by the way, is a chilling reminder that the war in Iran, the war in the Middle East, in Gaza, Israel, Lebanon, the war in Ukraine, will be still in 100 years' time affecting the lives of people. And, the Second World War also, the fact that my mother lost her husband, as said, lost her fiance before that, had huge difficulties with children, had a very difficult time with her own parents. I mean, these create psychological footprints in the mind and in the psyche, which will be there and will remain there unless they are somehow examined and reconciled.
Hello, Zeb here. Please forgive my interruption, but I wanted to let you know that at Aspects of History, we produce a digital magazine featuring articles, interviews, short stories, and book reviews of the best historical writing available. Authors featured including Ben McIntyre, Lucy Worsley, Andrew Roberts, and plenty more. An annual subscription is available for only $9.99. That's pounds or dollars. Yep, you heard that right. That's 6 issues for under £10 or dollars. Head over to aspectsofhistory.com to subscribe, where you can also gift subscriptions.
And so, that's another, that imprint of the Second World War. It might have finished in the summer of 1945, but the Second World War, in significant ways, has not finished any more than the First World War finished with the armistice in November 1918. So these are reflections in my mind. I mean, not in a mawkish or self-indulgent way, but in a sense of saying this is actually true, and suppressing these things or not acknowledging them is not true.
Yeah, I mean, digging into that further, I mean, clearly, given the end point of the walk, your own family's Jewish heritage and the memory of your first wife, Joanna, that shapes the experience of the walk too, and all of those stories of anti-Semitism you encountered. talk us through what it's like to be kind of walking through sometimes kind of living crime scenes.
So, yeah, I mean, my father was Jewish. My mother was Christian. I was brought up a Christian. I married a Jewish woman. We were married by somebody who I talk about in the book, who, as a child, was deported from Eastern Czechoslovakia to Auschwitz. Lost many of his families. Was on a death march, which he survived with his father. They had a maxim between them that they would never allow anyone to separate them. But then, just after the war ended, he succumbed to exhaustion, hunger, disease, fatigue, and the man called Hugo Grin. And so, yeah, I mean, but I'm not just looking at it through a Jewish lens. I mean, big question was anti-Semitism just another form of racism, or in the persistence throughout the centuries of it, and in the extent and the near universality of anti-Semitism, is it a particularly virulent form of racism, or indeed something altogether to just traditional racism? Their views on all of that. So, but I'm equally concerned by the victimization of any person because of their beliefs, and because of the color of their skin, and because of any non-compliance with the orthodox ruling ethos of the power in the land and indeed in the culture. So I think in that sense, at least, anti-Semitism is indivisible from all other forms of human nastiness and aggression. But clearly it's different to an extent. I mean, 6 million people were murdered between 1938 and 1945. And we've seen many appalling genocides since. And no doubt we are, even as we're recording this video, and no doubt that will continue. I mean, where are the silent, vast majority who are, to the very core of their beings, find this repugnant? In whose name is this being done, and who is perpetrating it, and what are we doing to stand up against it, not with aggression, but with the sure moral force of knowing that ultimately it will be goodness that will prevail, and not these forces of darkness. So this is walking. I mean, I finished in Auschwitz. I mean, it was extraordinary. And as we walked in, I had Sarah with me, my wife at this point. We walked past the garden where the commandant at Auschwitz lived with his family. Novelist Ian McEwan wrote about it in Zone of Interest, made into a very good film. I mean, there it was. We just walk into it. There was nobody around. And there was the cement wall there, hiding the children who were brought up by the commandant and his wife of Auschwitz, in the garden. It is all breathtakingly real, and frighteningly present. It was in the past, but it wasn't in the past. It's in the present now still. And there's that sense all the time, the liminality of, well, lots of liminalities. I'm walking by rivers, as I said. I mean, liminality of water and land, liminality of the conscious mind and the unconscious, but also the past and the present, and the way that they dance in between each other. And so, yeah, and a lot in it also about truth. I mean, one of the most extraordinary figures in the book became obsessed by the fact that the Nazis wanted to eradicate the whole truth of the Jewish race ever existing. So the Nazis had this fascination with destruction. You see that at Order-sur-Glane, near Limoges in South Mid France, which is the jump-off point for the 26-part series, The World at War of the 1970s, narrated by Laurence Olivier, and Order-sur-Glane tried to wipe off the face of the earth. And they did the same at Lidice, which was the town near Prague, which Hitler ordered to be destroyed because the would-be assassins had a connection with the would-be assassins of Heydrich, who was the protector of Bohemia and Moravia, and his one of his favorite people, and then the determination to try to deny the existence of the concentration camps by destroying them and burning them. And I talk in the book about those people who believe this and perpetrate beliefs about the Holocaust never existing, and truth. Truth is sacred, and this extraordinary figure who memorized the details of the transports coming in to Auschwitz and writing them down and then secreting them away and burying them in the almost certain belief that no one would ever discover the details, but they were, and the desire for absolute truth. And in a world in which we have a president of the United States who has no concept of what is true and what is not true, he has his personal truth, which is the truth, but no sense of objective truth, or indeed, I would say, of objective goodness and morality. So, yeah, I mean that section, and then there was, just another vignette. When I was a teacher, I spent much of my life in schools. Um, I was always bringing in 2, 3, 4 speakers every week to talk to the pupils and the community, and I'd never heard a more impressive speaker ever than Dirk Bogarde, who I brought in to talk about being one of the first into Belsen. And Belsen's important because it was the camp closest to the advancing Allies as they were coming through Holland towards Germany. First camp to be liberated, first time that really people understood the nature of the extent of the Holocaust and the brutality. And he held the audience utterly spellbound. I've still never heard anybody give a more shattering speech from a platform. Then some 10, 15 years later, his biographer got in touch with me after he died and wanted to talk about this. And he said, look, I've got some bad news for you. He was never at the camp. He'd made up the entire story. And since it's come out that maybe he was near the camp, but certainly didn't have the experiences that he was talking about. So this sense about the absolute sovereignty, the sovereignty of good, but the sovereignty of truth, underpins that whole book with a passion. And these extraordinarily heroic people who gave up their lives to preserve and tell the truth about what was happening. The person who went into Auschwitz voluntarily and then came out to distribute the truth about what was happening. And so I think that, oh my goodness, I mean, this is one of the search for truth, the search for goodness, the search for what we share in common between us rather than what divides us, are huge themes running through the book, like the proverbial writing in a stick of rock.
Yeah, no, it grounds it, and it's always kind of at the forefront of your thoughts as you pace. What do you hope that readers and listeners take away from all of these journeys of remembrance, responsibility, and the kind of possibilities of peace?
I think we're always trying to, aren't we, renew that interest. I was very struck when flying out once to Nuremberg and in the summer of 2024, and going through Heathrow past bookshops, which were just full of books about the anniversary of D-Day and the war, and Hitler's sidekicks, the people who were behind him. And I was thinking, where are the parallel stories there for the Germans? What stories can they be telling themselves that can enthuse them, excite their own children at school, bring families together, going to the theatre or cinema, or watching films on television at home? What can they share? And how can we stop this? I don't know. I don't want to stop it. But how can we provide an alternative discussion where we can find what we share in common rather than what is dividing us? And and this of course plays into the whole narrative of the EU, controversial topic, trigger warning. And of course, many people who wanted Brexit believe passionately still in the idea of working closely with Europe, just not in the way that Europe was going. But we have to reach out. The heroes to me have always been the bridge builders, the people who reach out across divides, not those who stay in their tribal cliques. I mean, having a tribal clique is good, but it's necessary, I think, for our formation of identities, but it's not sufficient to be fully human.
So you've teased the next path. When should we be expecting that? Do you have to write up Starmer's tenure in Number 10 first, given last month's news?
Heck, yeah. So I just finished a book about Brexit, where I've tried to bring together Brexiteers and Remainers, trying to find the commonality. And I've just finished a book on Rishi Sunak, who I thought under the circumstances did pretty well. I mean, that was quite amazing, wasn't it? The 4 adults living in Number 10, 3 of them were not white. Rishi and Akshata, his wife, and Jeremy Hunt's wife, Lucia, who's Chinese. I mean, that's saying something about Britain as it now is, but that's not why I think that he did a much better job than people allowed for. So that book is subtitled "The Last Conservative Prime Minister?" ? And then I'm going to write Starmer, and I think Starmer is a tragic story. Absolutely didn't have to happen. Unprecedented in history to have 400 MPs and a majority landslide and lose that within 2 years. I mean, what really happened? That will be the theme of that book. And then I want to, after other things I'm working on, AI in particular, which could eradicate humanity at worst. I don't think it will happen, but I think there are really significant fears that it will, if not eradicate humanity, take away the best of humanity and human identity, and human endeavor, and human relationships. But then take up this book. I've just got to do 1 or 2 medical things, which I talk about in the second book, to get just a little bit back more on top of my health again, and then set out from Krakow, walking due east over the border into Ukraine, and then through Lvov, extraordinary place, and then wheeling in a southeasterly direction down towards Kyiv. Now, at the moment, it's going to be too dangerous, so it needs somehow to. I mean, too dangerous. Not that I'm worried about danger. It's just won't be allowed to do it. So things will have to ease a bit to do it. I don't want to put anybody with me in danger. And then through Kyiv, then keeping on going, walking east as far as I can get, and certainly covering the village in Ukraine where my grandparents, who I never met, they were killed in the influenza plague, came from, fleeing oppression and in search for a better life. So, yeah, I mean, that book, the first book was written in and about the First World War, Path to Peace. The second book, Path to Light, is written in and about the Second World War. And this third book will be called Path to War. So second book, Path to Light, looking for good people. Path to War will be written in and about the Third World War and what it is that the vast majority of people who I contend do not want this to happen. What can be done to avert a catastrophe, and some would say it's already started. And just one last vignette: when I was walking through Prague, I gave a talk at the British Embassy, to which a lot of English-speaking community were invited. And I gave it the day after J.D. Vance had spoken at the Munich Security Conference with a deeply inflammatory speech and a deeply unpleasant speech. And this Czech audience were troubled, puzzled, frightened, deeply afraid, unhappy by what had happened to what had always been a guarantee of their security, American presence and American media that was being closed down. And if you live in Czechoslovakia and Poland, the Second World War is not history; it is present. The Czechs in 1938 were abandoned; they were not involved in the Munich conference. Their country was, which was a great country. You've got to recognize that Czechoslovakia, extraordinary economic, political, cultural power in Central Europe in the late 19th, early 20th century, that it was being dismembered, and for the Poles, betrayed in 1938-39, betrayed in 1945. Why would they want to trust the West when the West has so let them down, and when there is an incumbent in the White House surrounded by acolytes who have no understanding of the history? So, I mean, concluding, we need to keep the memory of what happened in the Second World War and in other wars, including the 30 Years' War, alive, in part so that we don't repeat it by people who know nothing. I mean, does Vance even know the dates? Does Trump even know the dates of the Second World War? Could they write an account of what happened in those events and how the countries of Central and Eastern Europe were betrayed and fell under German and then Soviet hegemony? And the answer is I think quite probably that they don't. Why would they care about objective history when what the thoughts in their own mind and in their acolytes' discussions are so much more enjoyable and interesting and potent than the dull reality of history? So history deeply matters, objective history, that search for truth, search for goodness, search for what we share in common.
Well, thanks so much, Anthony. Brilliant that you could join me to talk us through the book and share those experiences. So The Path of Light, Walking to Auschwitz is published in paperback by Atlantic. So listeners, do check out the podcast notes for links to purchase it. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thanks for having me on, Zeb.
Thanks so much for listening. Links are in the show notes. Please share with friends and family and keep your eyes peeled for new episodes. And if you want to get in touch, you can through X or email history@aspectsofhistory.com. But until then, thank you and good night.